Hi Silem stars, you're welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, then you're welcome to my channel. My name is Silem, very pleased to meet you. In today's video guys, I'm going to show you how to make a lovely underbust corset circle dress with puffy sleeves. So I'm going to show you the entire process from the drafting to the cutting to the stitching, okay? I also have a similar tutorial to this one, but that one is an underbust corset gathers dress. This is a circle dress, that one is a gathers dress, but they both have the underbust corset basque waistline effect. So if you want to see how we make this dress, definitely keep on watching.
Oh, hey, I didn't see you there.
So I'm starting off with drafting the front piece. The first thing I'm going to do is to draw the baseline, and then from the baseline I'm going to mark the vertical measurements. The first vertical measurement I'm going to mark is the armhole line, which is 9 inches. Then I'll mark the bust point line 11 inches and the under bust line 14.5 inches. I'll also mark the waistline, which is 17 inches. Now for the hip line, the normal hip line is 24 inches, but I'm going to go up by 2 inches, okay? So you don't want to mark your normal hip line. You want to go up by 2 inches, and then I'm marking 22 inches now instead of 24. I've labeled all the lines. Now on the baseline, I'm going to divide the shoulder by 2, mark that, and add ½ inch allowance. Now I'm going to mark the same thing I marked on the baseline on the armhole line. Then I'm going to connect both points with a straight line. For the neck width, I'm going to use 4 inches. You can use any neck width that you prefer, but for me, I'm using 4 inches for the neck width. And then for the neck depth, I'm using 3 inches because I want the neck to be wide but high. So I'm just connecting both points with a curved line to create the front neckline. And then from the baseline there, I'm going to come down by 1 inch, and then I'm going to connect that to the neck width in order to create the shoulder slope. Now I'm going to measure the line that I have from that shoulder slope to the armhole line, and then I'm going to get the midpoint. That midpoint I'm going to go in by ½ inch, and then I'm going to use my curved ruler to connect the 3 points together. The points at the shoulder slope, the 1 inch I came in by, the ½ inch I came in by rather, and the armhole line. That will give me my armhole curve. Now from the under bust, we're going to go up by 2 inches. Now we're trying to create that style line that this piece has. So we're just going to go up by 2 inches. Make sure you're doing this on the under bust. Then use your curved ruler to connect it back to the normal under bust line. And then on the hip line, I'm going to go up by 2 inches, okay? I'm going to go up by 2 inches. On the under bust, we went up by 2 inches. Now on the hip line, we're also going to go up by 2 inches as well. Now from the fold, that's the center front, I'm going to go out by 5 inches, okay? And then I'm going to use my curved ruler to connect both points together, like so. Now on the armhole line, I'm going to divide the bust circumference by 4, and then I'm going to mark that. On the under bust line, I'll divide the round under bust by 4 and mark that. And then on the hip line, I'll divide the hip circumference by 4 and mark that as well. Now, I'm not adding any allowance because I'm going to add it when I'm transferring to my fabric. If you want to add your allowance now, that's fine as well. But I'm just going to add it when I transfer it to my fabric, okay? So I'm just connecting all 3 points together like so. The same thing I have on the hip line, I'm going to mark that on the hemline, and I'm going to draw a straight line from the hip line to the hemline, okay? So just connect both points with a straight line. Now from that hip line, I'm going to go up by 2.5 inches, not 2 inches, 2.5 inches, okay? Then I'll use my curved ruler now to connect that to the marking at the center of that hip line. I made a mistake. The same thing I marked on the under bust, I'm supposed to mark that on the waistline. So I'm just correcting that. So make sure that you mark your round under bust measurement on your waistline, okay? So just connect it with a straight line and then curve it out to your hip line. Now, if you have a big tummy, you might have to stick with your normal waist measurement on the waistline. But if you have a flat tummy, you can use your round under bust circumference on your waistline, okay? So now I've gone ahead to place my front piece on top of another paper so I can, draft my back piece. The first thing I'm doing is just to make sure that I mark the zipper allowance, okay? So the zipper allowance I have here is actually 1 inch. I'm going to extend it to 1.5 inches when I'm transferring it to my fabric. But right now what I have is 1 inch. Now I'm just going ahead to mark all the vertical measurements, all the vertical lines. And then for my back neckline, I'm using 2 inches. But for the neck width for the back, I'm still using the same 4 inches, which is the same as what I used for the front. So I'm just drawing a curve to connect both points to create the back neckline. Now on the waistline for the back, I'm just going in by 1 inch, okay? Now, normally I would go in by half an inch normally to take out zipper bulge, but because this dress is not going to have any dart, I'm taking out 1 inch from that center back on the waistline, okay? So that will eliminate any zipper bulging, and it will also serve as my dart as well. To also take out any excess that the back would have had. Now I've marked the shoulder divided by 2 on the baseline, and I mark the same thing on the armhole line as well, and I'm connecting them. Don't forget to add that half-inch allowance when you mark your shoulder divided by 2. Now from the baseline, I came down by 1 inch and I'm connecting that to the neck width just like I did for the front. I'm also measuring, this line that I have here. Then I'm getting the midpoint. Now remember that for the front piece, we came in by half an inch at that midpoint. But because this is the back, we don't need to do that. So I'm just drawing a curve from that midpoint and connecting that to the armhole line. And that's basically it for the back drafting. Now I want to cut the sides together, okay? So it saves me time. So right now I'm cutting the sides for both front and the back together, okay? That's why I place them on top of each other. Now I'm going to be cutting along the waistline for the back. This is optional. You don't have to do this. But I like to do this because it makes the waist fit better. Okay. Now in order to further remove zipper bulging, I'm going to go up from the hem by 1 inch. Okay. Now also, you know that the back waistline and the front waistline is not the same. Okay. So for my clients, the difference between the front waistline and the back waistline is actually 1 inch. So that's why I took out 1 inch from there. So I'm just cutting that out so that, it fits better basically. So this is what it's going to look like once we'll join them back together, okay? For the front, I'm just going to go ahead and cut along that curve that's on the underbust. So just curve it out. So both the front and the back have 3 pieces, as you can see right here. Now for the front, I also want to cut along the waistline. This is also optional, okay? You don't have to do this, but I want that joining at the waistline, exactly at the waistline for both the front and the back. So that's what I've got done right here. So this is what we have for the front. Now in order to create that gathered effect, that fullness that we have at the bust area of the front, I'm just measuring the shoulder there, and then I'm dividing what I have on the shoulder by 2 and marking that midpoint. I'll do the same thing at the bottom, just measure what I have there and get the midpoint of that as well. And then I'm going to connect both points with a straight line. Now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create fullness using the slash and spread method, okay? So this is what we have now. I just want to show you what the pieces look like. Okay, that's why I'm unfolding the piece so you can see what it looks like, what it would look like rather when we are done sewing. So this is what the front piece is going to look like when we are done sewing, okay? So I just thought to show you what they would look like before we continue. Okay, so now back to this. I'm just going to go ahead and just slash along that line, okay? So don't cut it out completely. Leave a bit of the paper, towards the end so that it doesn't separate completely, okay? So now make sure that the fold of your pattern aligns with the fold of the fabric. Okay, so as you can see, I've gone ahead to fold my fabric. Now you can decide to spread as much as you want depending on how much fullness you want, the bust area to have. For me, I'm going to spread by 2.5. So the space between the pattern pieces is 2.5. You can make it 3 inches if you want. If you're bustier, you can make it 3 inches. Now, since I did not add allowance when I was drafting, I'm going to be adding the allowance now that I'm transferring to my fabric. Now, I did not add any allowance on my neckline. I didn't add any allowance on the armhole line, but I added half inch on the shoulder, and I'm adding 1.5 inches by the side. At the bottom as well, I'm also adding half inch allowance, okay, to enable me to join my pieces. Same thing with the other pattern pieces. I'm just going to go ahead and cut them out. I'm adding half inch at the top and at the bottom, but by the sides, I'm adding 1.5 inches. Okay. Now for the bottom part of this dress, we're going to use this Ankara fabric you can see on the screen. I'm using 3 yards of this Ankara fabric. Now I simply folded it diagonally or along the bias because I'm going to be cutting a 180-degree circle skirt. Okay. Now I'm going to take note of that hip line. So the hip line I used was 22 inches. Now the full length I want this dress to be is 61 inches. I'm going to subtract 22 from that and that will give me 39. Okay, 39. I made a mistake here and wrote 49, but it actually gave me 39. Now when I'm placing my pattern, I'm going to make sure that the center front of my pattern aligns with the fold of the fabric. Now, remember I did not put allowance by the side. I'm going to be putting allowance by the side when I am cutting it, okay? So yeah, that's 39. So now, at the top of the piece, I'm just adding half inch allowance for joining, okay? Now I'm going to fold another piece of fabric the same way so I can cut my back piece, okay? So now as you can see, I've done that and I've placed my front piece on top of the back piece. But I made sure to leave about 1.5 inches allowance, at that center back so that it serves as my zipper allowance for the back, okay? So for the back, for the top part, that's the waist area, I'm also going ahead to add that half inch at the top. Now for the length of this, I'm going to measure from the waist all the way down. I'm going to measure that's 39 inches, which is what I calculated, okay? And then I'm going to cut open that zipper allowance for the back. So that's it for, the bottom part of our piece. That's what it looks like. Now moving on to the sewing. These are my back pieces. Now everything I cut for the fabric for the top half, I'm going to cut the same thing on my lining, okay? Now the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to place these two pieces right sides facing here like this. Then I'm going to join them, okay? So just place them right sides facing and join them with half inch seam allowance. So do the same thing for your lining as well, okay? Now for the front piece, these are the pieces for my front. I'm just going to open all of them so you can see what we have. I went ahead to mark the wrong side with my chalk so I don't get confused. Now I'm going to start by joining these two pieces together. So just join them together. Make sure you're joining the straight parts of the pieces together with half inch seam allowance, okay? Then once you're done joining those two pieces, we're going to join the top part now to the bottom part. So now when you're joining, you're going to create a few pleats or gathers depending on what you want, just to create that fullness for the bust, okay? That's what gives it that underbust corset look, because the bust is full while the waist area is fitted, okay? So after joining all the pieces, I went ahead to open the allowance and I ironed it flat. Very, very important. Your piece has to be very, very neat. So as you can see, I've done the same thing with my lining. Now I'm placing the lining and the fabric right sides facing. I'll join them along the neckline. Join them along the neckline. I'm going to top stitch when I'm done. Then I'm going to also join them by the sides as well. For the front piece, this is what it looks like once I've created the gathers and I've joined all the pieces together. I also open the allowance and iron all the pieces flat as well, okay? Now I'm going to place my lining piece, join them along the neckline, top stitch, and join them by the sides as well. And then I'll turn it to the right side and iron it flat. As you can see, I've ironed it nice and flat. It's so neat. Okay, I also went ahead to top stitch the bottom part so that it stays put. This is what the front piece looks like as well. After turning it with the lining, I also top stitched the bottom as well. Now I'm going to place the two back pieces right sides facing, and I'm going to join them but with 1 inch seam allowance. Okay, just make sure you're using a loose stitch. Now for the skirt, from the waist down, I'm going to mark 9 inches, which is where my zipper is going to stop. Then I'm going to sew all the way down to the bottom. Okay, so this is what the back piece of the top looks like once we're done. So now I'm going to place the back piece right sides facing, the back piece of the top right sides facing with the back piece of the skirt. And I'm going to join them from the zipper allowance to one end and from the zipper allowance to the other end. Just do this bit by bit when you're sewing. If you are not very comfortable with sewing or joining curves, you can pin it first before sewing. For the front, I'm going to do the same thing. Can you see? I'll just place them right sides facing. Make sure that I start at the midpoint there. Make sure you pin the midpoints in place. Like I said, if you're not comfortable sewing curves, you can pin it first, but just make sure you join it neatly. So as you can see, I've gone ahead to insert my zipper. Now I'm going to place my front piece right sides facing with my back piece, and then I'm going to join them at the shoulders. Now moving on to the sleeve, I'm going to be drafting my sleeve pattern. I'm just going to be drafting a normal basic sleeve, and then we're going to modify this with using the slash and spread method to become a puff sleeve. Okay, so from the top of the paper, I just mark 5 inches. The full length of this paper is 9 inches, which is the length I want my sleeve to be. Then I marked the round sleeve divided by 2, which gave me 7 inches on that 5-inch mark. And then I added 1.5 inches allowance for my sleeve. So what I have there, I'm just going to mark that same thing at the hem there. Okay, so I'll mark the same thing at the hem. Now this is my piece after joining the shoulders together. This is what it looks like. Now I'm just going to go ahead now and measure the armhole that I have for my piece, just so that I am going to use what I measure to draft my sleeves. I'm sure that it's accurate. So when I measure, what I have is about 10 inches. Okay, so I'm just going to draw a diagonal line from the top of the paper to meet that point that I have on that 5-inch mark. And then I'm going to measure that diagonal line, and then I'm going to get the midpoint of that line. All right, now I'm going to draw a curve from the top to meet that midpoint, and then I'm going to draw another curve from that midpoint all the way down to that point that I marked on the 5-inch mark. Okay, now I'm just going to measure that curve that I drew to make sure that it's the same measurement with the armhole. Remember that I've already measured the armhole that I have on my sleeve. Okay, so once I have that, I'm just going to draw a line to connect it with the points at the hem of the sleeve, and that's it for our basic sleeve. So if you don't know how to draft a basic sleeve pattern, here it is. Very easy to draft. But like I said, we're going to be modifying this to create our puff sleeve. Now the reason why I started with a basic sleeve is because I want to use that basic sleeve pattern for the lining of my piece. The lining is going to be a basic sleeve, but the main fabric piece is now going to have that gathers to create the puffy sleeve. So I just simply transferred my pattern to the lining, and then I added 1 inch at the hem just to extend the length a bit. So now I'm going to take my pattern and I'm going to slash right at the center. Okay, so just cut right at the center. Make sure you don't cut all the way, just like you did for the bustier piece. Okay, don't cut all the way through. So you can now spread it as wide as you want it to be. So now I've gone ahead to fold my fabric like so. Now if I spread this all the way like this, it's going to give me that flare effect. Okay, where the top is small but the bottom is very wide, but I want mine to have that gathers puffy effect, so I cut it all the way through. So if you want that flare effect, you can you don't have to cut it all the way through. But if you want it to have a very full gather effect that is full at the top and full at the bottom, then you have to slash it all the way. Okay, so I've gone ahead to spread my piece as much as I want. So I'm just adding 3 inches now at the hem. Okay, so I'm extending the length of the sleeve by 3 inches. The reason is because the main fabric, for it to have that puffy effect, the main fabric has to be longer than the lining. Okay, so that's why I added 3 inches to the hem. If it's not longer than the lining, it's not going to have that puffy effect. So I'm just cutting now. Now, if you want to know how wide I spread, at the top I spread it by 7 inches. Okay, so the top is not so full. And then at the bottom, I spread it by 13 inches. You can actually spread it equally at the top and the bottom, but I don't want the top to be too full. I don't want the puff at the top to be too full. Now the next thing you're going to do is to place the fabric and the lining right sides facing. Now make sure that you get the midpoints of the hem for both pieces. So just align them at the midpoint and then gather the hem of the fabric to fit into the hem of the lining. Okay, just to create that puff effect. So just go ahead and join them with 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, after joining them with 1/2 inch seam allowance, you have to top stitch after that. So this is what it looks like after I've joined the lining and the fabric and I've top stitched. Now I'm just going to make sure that they are equal by the sides. Okay, once I make sure that they are equal by the sides, I'm going to join them together by the sides. I'll do that on both sides. Okay, after joining, this is what the piece looks like. Now I'm going to turn it to the right side, and then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to align them at the midpoint of the top there, and then I'm simply going to just gather the excess that I have, but I'm going to make sure that the gathers that I have is right at the center. So towards the sides, I'm going to make sure that they are straight, no gathers there. Just make sure that it's flat, no gathers there. And then when I get close to the center, I'm going to put the gathers there so that all of that puff is centered at the midpoint of the sleeve. Okay, so once I have that, I'm going to just join the fabric and the lining together. So this is what it looks like. Now this is a beautiful way to create a puffy sleeve without elastic. Okay, you don't need elastic. Once you make the lining smaller and you gather the fabric into the lining, you have your perfect puffy sleeve. So now I'm just opening up my front and back pieces like so. Now I'm going to make sure that the center point of my sleeve aligns with that shoulder seam. I'm going to pin it there and then align the rest of my sleeve to the armhole. Okay, and I'm just going to join my sleeve like so. Okay, this is what it's going to look like. Make sure you join it with 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I'll do the same thing for both sleeves. After joining the sleeves, I'm going to turn it to the wrong side. Now starting from the sleeve, I'm going to join the front and back pieces using the original body measurements. Okay, so I'm going to use the round sleeve measurement for the sleeves, and then I'm also going to use the rest of the body measurements, so the bust, waist and hip. I'm just going to mark the body measurements and then use that to join the front and back pieces together. I'll do that for both sides, and once we're done, this is what we are going to have. Can you see how lovely it looks? I really love the combination of this fabric and the Ankara fabric. I don't even know what this fabric is called. Let me know if you know the name of this fabric in the comment section. But this is how lovely it looks. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up if you found it helpful. Don't also forget to register for my online classes. I'm going to leave all the details in the pinned comments down below. Thanks for watching. Bye.